Our first speaker on our second talk track on empowering equity and justice in the community is Chanel Hampton. She is the founder and president of Strategic Community Partners, a Detroit-based firm focused on working with organizations by advising, designing, and managing projects and initiatives that advance equity with and for communities. SCP, Strategic Community Partners, also operates a community center and a co-working space in Detroit's legacy-rich Fitzgerald neighborhood. Chanel's lifelong passion for Detroit, for justice, and for education and equity drive her personal and professional work, while motivating her to continue growing as a leader in her community. So without further ado, making her way to the stage, representing Detroit, Michigan, founder and president of Strategic Community Partners, please welcome the Duchess of Dopeness, Chanel Hampton. Take it away, Chanel.
Good evening, good afternoon, everyone. I think I might be actually having some technical difficulties. I'm trying to put my deck up on the screen, so if you just want to give me a minute, let's see if we can. It was working. And Raj, I don't know if you want to maybe try taking over for a second, but for some reason, my screen looks really different than it did during our test.
All right, while you get that figured out, we can work. Okay, your deck is up now.
Can you see it?
Yep, it says moments are not enough. Now it's on like the main PowerPoint.
Okay, I am resplitting my screen. Y'all, we tested this out yesterday. Apologies, but this is the world that we're living in, but I'm happy to be with y'all. All right, let's see. Raj, I'm going to have you tell me if you can see. How does it look?
I see moments are not enough, and it's in presentation mode. It just went back into like slide mode.
Okay.
Draft mode.
Let's see. This is not working like yesterday. Let's see. Okay, I am unfortunately just going to stay on my deck screen, so I won't be able to see the chat. But
good.
I'm really excited to be with you all today. Apologies about that. And Raj, thank you for the introduction. It was great meeting you in person last year at Intermittent. Really excited to be with you all and have a conversation around the reality that moments are not enough. As Raj mentioned, we actually operate a community center and co-working space in Detroit's Fitzgerald neighborhood, and wanted to, just before I jump into my conversation with you all today, share an update. So when I was at Intermittent last year, I talked about getting a seat at the table and bringing others to that table and expanding it, and even creating your own table. And so one of the things that we shared as a clear example of how we were doing this was actually being in renovation and under construction for our community center. So just wanted to share a quick update with you all. So if I can't see the chat, but hopefully you all can hear this when I play it. It'll just be a minute or so.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'm a native Detroiter, and I could not be more proud to be standing in one of our neighborhoods. Not downtown, not midtown, not a couple select neighborhoods that continue to get press and development opportunities, but we're standing this morning in the Fitzgerald community.
I'm excited to be here today to see the birth of this new vision and actually to be a part of it. I live right up the street of 6 Mile Road, so I will be frequenting this place often.
For the next several months, a number of organizations are going to start working from this space.
This will be awesome for all of the community partners who come here, as well as those who just want to be change agents in their neighborhoods, to be able to come in and access, I think, the meeting space, the kitchen area, and just the great energy the space brings will be awesome for the community.
So if you all can join me and officially
So I want to just go off this slide for a second to make sure that it doesn't play again, just with some of the tech difficulties. But I wanted to share that for a few reasons. One, there are actually a couple people in the audience today who were there to celebrate. We had a really intimate private ribbon cutting before our large community day. Tammy Jones, Laura Khalil. I'm sorry if I missed some others. I think I saw Dwayne Barnes and many folks in the audience actually been at our community center. And our community center is about providing space for the community, by the community, and in the community. And so for us, this is a moment, an example of how we help bring about equity in the Fitzgerald community and in Detroit. And so that community center is a moment, and it's continued to build. We were there for about 4 months before COVID hit, and have had several events, nonprofits, CBOs working out of this space. But at the root of why we actually purchased and opened that community center is the reality that our communities experience deeply rooted racism and inequity. And the opportunity to provide that space is one way, a very clear action in which we know that we can help level the playing field, if you will. So I'm excited to talk to you all today. Just wanted to share an update because the support we received from the intermittent community last year was just so inspiring and so affirming as I was up late nights checking on the building and beyond. But as we continue to talk about moments and how moments aren't enough, there was an article that was published early in July from the New York Times that shared about Black Lives Matter and the movement possibly being the largest in United States history. And what I think is important here that I will name is two things. One, my conversation and my talk with you all is coming from an unapologetically Black lens. I will not even necessarily refer to people of color. You will hear me say Black. And the reality is, unfortunately, Black bodies have been disregarded by every racial and ethnic community across history in some way or another, historically and objectively speaking. The other thing that I will name is this is not new. George Floyd, Michael Brown, Breonna Taylor, Rhea Melton, like these are not new things. The reality is we have social media now. And social media is capturing horrific instances that have been happening to Black bodies across time for centuries and generations. I want to be also clear that I wholeheartedly support protesting and organizing, but the reality is it's not enough simply just as protesting and organizing. And I myself, I'm a protester, I'm an organizer, but the reality is when you look at the most powerful civil rights movements across history, they weren't just protests. So here is the iconic, legendary walk across the Pettus Bridge that became known as Bloody Sunday. And unfortunately, we just lost Congressman John Lewis, who is a legend and has truly transformed the lives of so many Black folks across generations. They were walking, they were marching, they were protesting peacefully. But you also see across the most impactful movements a multi-pronged approach where protests and marches are part of that, but it is not the end all be all. So this picture is from actually the SNCC, and they are training each other. And actually, you'll see a man blowing cigarette smoke. This is part of the harassment that protesters and organizers knew they would experience. There are actually pictures that I didn't put up because I didn't want to trigger anyone of them literally slapping and physically abusing one another to prepare them mentally for what they knew they were going to experience. A deep discipline training was part of the movement. We also have the Black Panthers, the People's Free Food Program. And what a lot of people don't know is that this program was actually the precipice and beginning of the WIC program. And so I encourage you, if you're not familiar with some of what I'm sharing, to take some time and read up on it. It's really powerful, and it begins to peel back these layers of this is a reality we see now, but it's been going on for quite some time. And lastly, you'll see this aerial shot that is near and dear to my heart. It is burned into my mind and my heart. This is in South Africa. This is the first democratic election after apartheid ended. And I actually had the opportunity to live and study in South Africa. And the reality is people got out and voted. And what's really heartbreaking is, whatever state you're in, I think Heidi said we have over 10 states attending today. We're not showing up and voting in the way that we need to. By these folks standing in line for, there were days, literally. And I mean, these were not all young folks, like young spring chickens, like people in their 70s and 80s and 90s who were like, this is my right, I will vote. This is a tactic that we can use to shift power. And so I actually talked about this with Cranes during a special report. There were several Black leaders from across the region who they spoke to and interviewed. And similar to the panel of women, I was sharing several things around like diversity is not equity. The fact that we see Black people, right, in organizations, in companies that are able to freely hypothetically be, this doesn't mean that equity has been achieved. And I also talked about the reality that protests are not enough alone. So I'm a teacher. I started my traditional career as a teacher. That is my background. So I don't want y'all just sitting at your computers or watching this on your smart TV. I really want you all to engage and to also walk away with clear actions that you can take. And so when I think about this very nebulous and real and massive multi-generational reality of inequity and racism, particularly towards Black bodies, I think that it can become overwhelming. Like, what do I do? What can I do? How do I shift a system? The reality is it is going to take years and decades to dismantle a system that has been built over 400 years. But each of us here today are consumers, professionals, and social beings. And President Obama said, I'm asking you in 2017 to believe, not in my ability to bring about change, but in yours. And the reality is, by us all being consumers, professionals, and social beings, change happens when ordinary people get involved. And that's what I want you to walk away from this conversation, at least, feeling even more deeply believing in. So we're all consumers, whether you have a shopping addiction during quarantine, whether you are, you have your cell phone, we are all sitting on a smart TV, a laptop, a phone, a cellular device, some sort of technology. And the reality is, I'm going to ask you to do a couple things. I will, after I kind of go through this slide, pause because I'd encourage you to take a screenshot of it. But I'm going to X out for a second, and it's not going to be pretty because I do want to see some of the chats. So I would like to know, I want you to take a look at what you are wearing, what your technology is, what your accessories are. And I want you to chat in at least 3 to 5 brands that you are wearing right now. So go ahead and take a second, look at what you're wearing. I mean, we're all quarantined. Some people may just have some tops on and some shorts, but what are you wearing? And go ahead and chat those in to the stage chat. Okay, I see Apple, Old Navy, Apple. Okay, y'all are fancy in your homes. Okay. Eddie Bauer, Fila. Y'all, I never thought Fila would make a comeback. Okay, so we're seeing all of these brands coming in. Yeah, oh, wow. Okay, a lot of brands coming in. And there are some trends. So I want you to ask yourself, I want you to do 3 things. If you have a notebook or a piece of paper next to you, I want you to write down the brands that you just chatted in. And I want you to actually block off 20 to 30 minutes in your calendar and research at least 2 to 3 of those brands. And if your brand is not operating equitably, the question is, will you give up purchasing that brand? For me, I actually had read Phil Knight's Shoe Dog, and it actually made me start purchasing Nike. The reality is companies have been coming out, brands have been coming out with Black Lives Matter statements, anti-racist statements, equity statements. And so I was sitting at home one day, kind of looking on my phone through some of these statements and thought to myself, are they actually backing it up in how they operate as a company? And this is something that was just talked about on the panel, in fact. So I actually went to Nike's national leadership team. And lo and behold, there was not only not a Black person on their leadership team. From what I could perceive, there was also not a single person of color. Everyone appeared to be baby boomer, tail end of Gen X, and white. And so for me, while that's extreme, I said, I don't know if I'm purchasing Nike again. That's a pretty extreme example. But the reality is we have companies that are not operating equitably, and they continue to gain power and influence. And it's because of us. We truly do hold the power as consumers. All right, so I'm going to go out again. It's going to look ugly and you're going to see my slides again. But let's talk about your habits and needs. I want y'all to chat in 2 places you're going to go this weekend. Maybe that's like the grocery store, errands. I know we're all socially distancing. But what are 2 places that you are going to go this weekend? Or if you're like, I'm in this weekend, maybe next week. So go ahead and chat in. What are a couple places you're going to go? Or where are a couple places you're going to go? Ooh, Easter market. I need to go grocery shopping this weekend, y'all. Ooh, brewery and farm. I'm intrigued. Oh, Target. I'm addicted. It's real. Plum Market, Walgreens. Ooh, GameStop. Arboretum. Beautiful. Costco. I have refused to go in Costco because I cannot have another addiction. More power to you. All right. So as you all are identifying these places, I want you to, if you don't know, do a little bit of research and figure out if one of those 2 places is Black owned, Black led, Black operated. And I want you to shift to ensure that at least one of those places is Black owned. So if you are going to a restaurant, if you don't know, do some research. There are, I mean, I'm in Detroit right now, but the reality is that there are Black owned businesses. They are prevalent. They are here. They just don't necessarily have as large of a consumer and customer base for a number of reasons that we're discussing today. And I will say, particularly in the past couple months, more databases have popped up that give you like literally lists of Black owned businesses, Black led companies, et cetera. And the last piece is really accountability, right? So if you have a brand that you feel strongly about and are loyal to, the reality is like you are giving them the power, right? Like Jeff Bezos didn't just like, he wasn't born with power per se, right? He is getting power through money because we are all addicted to Amazon. So when you see racist and equitable practices, when you see marketing materials that are painful and triggering, you need to hold your brands accountable. That can look like, you know, tweeting out at a company. That can look like we see change.org and color of change petitions left and right. And it seems that the momentum is continuing to pick up. But these 3 areas, you have the power as a consumer. When we as consumers start to shift our habits, it actually begins to shift power. Why we don't see sustainable power shifting is because we aren't consistent and long-term and disciplined in our consumer habits. So I'm just going to pause for a second. And if you want to take a picture or a screenshot of this slide, I'm also more than happy to provide the slides as well after. So we're all consumers. We are also all professionals. And here, again, this is directly aligned to the conversation that we were just engaging in around the workplace. And so I want to do a quick equity check. So I am going to not go off of my screen for this one, but I want you all to chat in. And it's just going to look like a bunch of yeses or nos because I'm going to go a little quickly through these questions. And again, I'll pause at the end so y'all can take a screenshot. And I'm going to put my contact information in the chat box. It's also in my profile. If anyone wants to talk about this in your organization after, I am more than happy to. But does your organization have an equity or anti-racist policy statement? Feel free to chat in, yes or no. Does your organization have an equity or anti-racist committee? I'm really curious if people are chatting in, yes or no. Has your organization conducted an equity or anti-racist audit? And here I want to be clear, the way that companies operate, if we were to analyze like how we do data, we do quality checks and analysis with products, with data, with other information. We are putting time in analyzing and quality checking what we value in a company. If we truly value a commitment to equity and anti-racism, there should be similar processes, rigorous, disciplined, consistent, frequent processes that actually aim to discover, is this happening? Is it not? So if your organization, has conducted an audit, what was lifted up and what actions came from it? If not, I'm going to, again, pause at the end of this slide, but I think this is a really good reflection point. So even Monday, when you're heading back into work, maybe you pull out a picture of this slide and take 10 minutes to really have an honest reflection and quick equity check with your organization. But if your organization hasn't had an audit or consistently does these audits or whatever they may call them, why do you believe that's the case? Can you do anything about it? Are you willing to do anything about it? This is just brass tacks, dollars speak. How much of your consultant and vendor budget goes to Black-owned, Black-led, and or Black majority businesses? Here, an example that I can give is the video I showed at the top with our community center. Every single vendor, our construction company, firms, everyone that we worked with was actually, it was a Black-owned, they were Black-owned local Detroit-based companies, with the exception of our desks, because we literally could not find like a company. But the reality is that contract, even though I have a 2,000 square foot community center, that contract and the money that went into that building and the renovation was a significant contract for the firm that we worked with. P&P Group, they were fantastic. I would gladly recommend them to anyone. The reality is if I would have worked with, a much more established majority-led white organization, $100K, $200K, $250,000 is nothing. That contract also allowed this company to continue to scale. So the reality is also, again, you're shifting the reality, you're shifting the power, and you're giving people a seat at the table that simply haven't had it. And then just a final question, is your organization committed to equity and or anti-racism? If so, what makes this true? And if not, why do you work there? What will you do about it? What can you do about it? And so I'm going to pause here for a second again and let you all, if you would like, to take a picture or a screenshot of this slide. And then I'm excited to talk about us being social beings. All right. So again, we all are consumers. We're all professionals, right? You're engaging in the workforce in some way, shape, or form. And we're all social beings. I want to be clear, this is not the work of Black people. Non-Black people need to have these conversations. And here are the conversations that I'm talking about. This is an image that has been floating around social media and has gone viral several times over in the past several months. And you can see this triangle on your screen. At the top, above the line, there are overt white supremacy, what are deemed to be socially unacceptable acts, but that continue to happen, as we see. Below, which is 90% of the triangle, are these covert, socially acceptable, what many people call, so that it's less triggering, microaggressions. And so I just want to pause here for a second, let you grasp a couple of these because there are several examples here. And then I want to have a conversation about the conversations that non-Black folks need to have. So I want I encourage you and I invite you to have an honest reflection. I want you to think about a time that a racist statement was made or you saw discrimination occurring and no one said anything. Nothing happened. Everyone acted like it didn't happen. Were you the person that didn't say anything? Were you the person that did the action? And why? This is how this triangle here creates what is socially acceptable, because we don't speak up. We don't have these conversations. We don't stop someone when we know they're wrong, but we're more worried about a family member or a friend no longer liking us. When the reality is, it's very clear to Black people that people don't like us. And you have to have conversations. So I'm curious, as you take some time, and I really do hope that you take some time to reflect on this, would you be willing to share that reflection with your circle? Maybe there were a couple other friends there. Maybe there was a conversation that was being had and everyone was just silent. Would you be willing to share that? And also, how can you proactively have conversations to help actively dismantle racism? I have colleagues and friends who are starting book clubs, who are having like virtual at this point because of COVID, like documentary parties, watching documentaries like 13th, Not the Help, and having conversations about a history that our American education system does not teach us about and lies about. And having real-time conversations, because the reality is no matter how much work you do, no matter how many circles you sit in and preach to people about being anti-racist and being equitable, if you yourself are silent and being a bystander when these things are happening, there comes a time when silence is betrayal. So I know our time has been short together, but the reality is like racism and anti-Blackness is a heavy, heavy, heavy thing. It's a heavy burden. It's a very real reality. But the other reality is we can all take action, right? Obama said, everyday people, it's the small changes. As professionals, as consumers, and as social beings, we can take action every day. There's no excuse. We can take action. It doesn't take a million people showing up. That is a great gesture, but it's the everyday actions. Action without vision is only passing time. Vision without action is merely daydreaming. But vision with action can change the world. So I ask you, what vision do you have and what action will you take? Thank you all. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I will share my contact information. And I truly, truly, truly hope that you all take some time with those screenshots and pictures to dig deeper into this, because this is how we begin to shift power and realities and value Blackness. Thank you.